Hey folks, it's Ardwulf. Welcome. I thought I would do a follow-up to last week's Alternatives to D&D video. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I have more recommendations to make. There are more games I like than I was able to mention in the previous video. Bear in mind that these are not the only options available. They are simply my personal recommendations. It was pointed out that my personal tastes tend to skew toward heavier RPGs, and I will absolutely cop to that. Although I will do so with the caveat that I think some of the games that I recommended last week are in fact simpler than their reputation would suggest. Nevertheless, I will be including some lower complexity titles this week. So the first game we're going to talk about today is in fact the obvious one for those looking for an alternative to D&D, particularly those people who fondly remember the D&D 3 and 3.5 eras, and that is, of course, Pathfinder. This is the first edition Pathfinder RPG. There is a second edition that was released last year in 2019. It streamlines this somewhat, but Pathfinder, in this edition at least, is very much the same game as D&D 3 and 3.5. There are some differences. Some of those differences are noticeable and significant, but it is the same game as D&D 3.5. One of the advantages of Pathfinder is that it has tremendous, possibly best-in-class adventure support. Very large number of standalone adventures are available, as well as what Paizo calls adventure paths, which is an idea that Paizo has done more to pioneer than anyone else. These are essentially pre-written, pre-prepared, ready-to-run campaigns in 6 volumes. Some other companies that do adventure paths do different numbers of volumes, but Paizo has always stuck with 6. At least in the Pathfinder era. I will warn that Pathfinder is quite crunchy. Do not be surprised to find a great deal of mechanical weight laid upon you as the players or referees in this game system. But there are players who prefer that, and experience suggests that the number of players who prefer a crunchier system is actually quite high. So if your issues with D&D arise not with D&D itself, but with Wizards of the Coast, then you might find that Paizo's Pathfinder is a viable option for you. It has a robust play community, there's a lot of organized play, and it has tremendous adventure support. The next game we're going to talk about is another one that is sort of heavy, but not as heavy as its reputation suggests, and that game is HARNMASTER. Now this is the current 3rd edition of HARNMASTER that is available from Columbia Games. This is a great new edition. It is in a boxed set, which is in Columbia's kind of sleeved box set type of thing, and the idea is that you're going to put the contents, the rules that are contained in here, into a binder. Now there are 2 different versions of HARNMASTER available right now. The first of which is the one I just showed you, the 3rd edition rules from Columbia Games. The other one is called HARNMASTER Gold, and this was N. Robin Crosby's preferred version of HARNMASTER before he passed away. It is substantially more complicated. There is substantially more mechanical overload in HARNMASTER Gold, so be prepared. Personally, my recommendation is to use HARNMASTER 3rd edition from Columbia, but by all means, if you're interested, pick up the HARNMASTER Gold materials from Celestia to use as a mine for additional ideas. The HARNMASTER system itself is a very interesting and novel percentile-based system that has some really interesting and unique features, but of course, the primary selling point that you're going to find with HARNMASTER is the setting of Harn itself, which is, in my opinion, and I've gone on at length about this in previous videos, so check those out, one of the finest settings ever designed for fantasy gaming. Character generation is quite detailed, the system itself is quite gritty and lethal, but in actual play it runs pretty smoothly. I ran a very successful HARNMASTER 3 campaign several years ago, and I would love to run it again at some point soon. Another pair of games that I will recommend are 2 games that are powered by the apocalypse. They are Blades in the Dark and Band of Blades. Both of these are very nice little hardcovers from Evil Hat Productions. They are both powered by the Apocalypse games. What that means is that they both borrow the core system from another game called Apocalypse World, which has been extremely influential in indie RPG circles. It is what I would describe as a partially story game driven game system. It's not quite all the way there toward being 100% story game. It still has some fairly traditional RPG elements. Now, in Blades in the Dark, the player group is a crime syndicate, and you are existing in a medieval fantasy city, and you might come up against other crime syndicates, and there are mechanisms in play to deal with that. In Band of Blades, on the other hand, the player group is a mercenary company. So if you want to compare these to fantasy literature, you can draw analogs between Blades in the Dark and Stephen Brust's Jerrig series, and between Band of Blades and the Black Company series. I have played both of these. I have had a lot of fun with them, and they are drifting into a mechanically lighter direction than what we have dealt with so far. Neither game is particularly heavy. Both of those games have strong tools with which to manipulate the narrative within the campaign. Moving further in the direction of light mechanics and games that give the players narrative tools to manipulate the story with is Fate. This is Fate Accelerated. This is the stripped-down version of the system. Many people prefer to run with this. There is a larger volume called Fate Core, which I don't have a physical copy of because I got in on their PDF Kickstarter, which provided me with a ludicrous amount of content. But you can find a very similar-looking Fate Core rulebook that looks a lot like this. Fate is a story game. The mechanics are not simulative at all, and what they do is they give you tools with which to manipulate the narrative within the game on the part of both the players and the game master. Like the Apocalypse engine, it has spawned a large variety of hacks. The Dresden Files RPG is powered by Fate, for example, and there are a host of other Fate-related games. Once again, I have played Fate and had quite a bit of fun with it. It is definitely a big change of pace if you're used to more traditionally constructed RPGs. I will now talk about a game that I talk about quite a bit on this channel, and one which I will stipulate is no more complicated than Fate Accelerated, and that is Classic Traveler. This is the original edition of Traveler in the 1977 Little Black Books edition. However, there are different ways to procure the Classic Traveler rules, but whichever way you pick, they're all essentially the same rules. There are some very minor differences between the editions. There's also the Traveler book, which is it's originally available in both hardcover and softcover. You can get a print-on-demand version of this from DriveThruRPG right now, or buy it in PDF. Or you can get the very free Starter Traveler. Now, I guess it's not free all the time, but this Traveler Starter Edition is free on DriveThruRPG as of this filming, and this is where I would go if you are interested in Traveler. This is the original 1977 to 1983 edition of the game. I think you will find it surprisingly robust and elegant and holds up very well today, despite its age. I have said before, and I will say again, that Traveler gets my very highest recommendation, and I do recommend that you check it out. Once again, this video is not intended to objectively state the quality of these games. These are instead my personal recommendation. I have played all the games that I have talked about in this video, and I heartily recommend them all, especially Traveler. If you have additional suggestions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Click the bell icon for notifications when new videos are released, and leave me any questions, requests, or comments below. And if you'd like to support the channel, there's a Patreon link in the video description. Until next time, thanks for watching, and happy gaming.